cricket related, sport related that may help me in life. So signed up for something called a master's in sport biomechanics at Loughborough, which is supposed to be the best sport university in the world, has the best sport incubation center
Wow.
for startups trying to build. Looking back at Cricket Revolution's app that we were building too many things at the same time. And I
Mm.
think even at Digger initially, we were doing the same thing. We were solving multiple problems where we were taking on secret management, we were taking on CI/CD for Terraform, we were taking on containerization of whichever repo people had to upload. So I guess we were solving like 5 or 6 problems, and we realized there were multiple points of failure. Again, same realization that I had at Cricket Revolution like a year or two later, but now in a venture-backed company with multiple engineers and resources on hand. Got a lot of stars, got a lot of attention on YouTube, got a lot of attention from influencers in this Terraform sphere, and just continue to lean in towards that. And in October, I was offered to be one of the co-founders because of a few
Wow.
internal changes that needed to happen at Digger, and I accepted it. And
Welcome to the Ready Set Do podcast, where we discuss journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us. I'm Naman Pandey, a noteworthy not expert, and in this episode, I'm joined by Utpal Nadiger. My discussion today with Utpal offers a unique take on decision making for anyone that's ever considered how different their life might have been if they had made alternate choices. Utpal is a co founder at Digger, which is a UK and Bay Area based startup. But perhaps more notably, he is a lifelong cricket fanatic, having played semi professionally in India, and he continues to play club cricket in the UK as of May 2024. He is also the co-founder of the Cricket Revolution, which is a product for cricketers to leverage to get better at the sport. A single striking theme underlines Utpal's remarkable life journey so far. His belief that when making an important life decision, the outcome that guarantees the most fun is in fact the right option. Before you immediately discard that as a terrible take, give me just a moment. I'd like you to really consider your own life journey thus far and think of how many times the option that guaranteed the most fun was not, in fact, the easiest option. We discuss how Utpal combined the North Star of his life, his passion for cricket, with his amazing ability to just do things to forge out such an incredible life journey for himself. Doing justice to my show title and in the spirit of just jumping in and doing things, we go over what it takes to make it as a professional cricketer, at least based out of India, living, conducting research, and playing cricket in the UK, and finally spearheading the growth of an international tech startup. We see how time and time again Utpal was able to apply his rule for optimizing for fun with pretty decent results. While recording this episode, I couldn't help but think back to Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech from 2005, where he said, quote, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever." End quote. I found that every single step of Utpal's journey potentially gives insight on how one can apply the optimize for fun rule to their own life decisions. For what it's worth, I think it is at least an interesting thought experiment to conduct on our own journeys thus far. In keeping with our theme of learning from somebody that's just 2 steps ahead instead of an expert, I'd like to emphasize that it is not lost on me that the generalizations I'm making are broad at their best and ill advised at their worst. Having said that, my goal is merely to highlight that there is a possibility that answers to seemingly infinite philosophical questions like how to make life decisions accurately can, in fact, be as simple as just optimize for fun. So, now without further ado, my conversation with Utpal. Welcome.
thanks, Naman. Happy to be here.
Let's jump into things. Let's talk about cricket. And I know it's been probably the north star of your life in terms of the one thing that you've been passionate about throughout your journey, which we will be unpacking here shortly. Can you talk us through what about cricket interests you so much, and what about it makes you, just love it so much that it just refuses to go away from being a key part of your life?
Well, this reminds me of a very, very funny story, right? Very early on, right, when I was a kid, 2004, I think it was when Sehwag scored his 300 and 309. That was the first ever series that I watched. Um, and I didn't know how cricket worked. I didn't know the innings and what innings meant. And I got myself a book, like a new, and I asked my dad, how things work,
Mhm.
what's the first innings, what's the second innings. does the fourth innings mean 4 innings, or does it mean two each, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And my dad sort of explained the game to me that day. He'd actually tried a little bit before, but he was unsuccessful because, well, I hadn't taken on. I was disinterested. Well, 2004, like 7 years old, and like 6, 7
Okay.
years old.
Gotcha.
Really, really wanted. I was looking for cool stuff to do, right? Like you have a lot of free time and looking for cool stuff to do. Watched Sehwag bat and like never stopped watching and being in love with the game. So that's where it started, I guess, and just stuck on. I guess maybe I just found it, and it's just been the most important thing in my life ever since.
So I think that's really interesting because you say that it was Sehwag that made you take notice of the game. So most people or most kids that I played cricket with were all about batting. In our books, bowling was just something you did when you didn't have to bat, and to get to that point where you did have to bat again. But
Yeah.
it does sound like you kind of went the other way almost and
I started
focused.
off as a batsman, by the way. Like
Oh, okay. I actually
until
okay.
year 10 or like 10th grade in India, um, I wanted to be a batsman. I grew a lot in that period, like in terms of not like in in terms of my career and stuff, but like I just became really tall suddenly. Like I grew like I think 6 inches or something over a period of say 3 years, or
Wow.
slightly lower. I just couldn't bat as well anymore. But even if I didn't try hard, I was bowling better than I wanted to. I was told to lean into whatever I did better, and the coaches, and I've been going to like I started going to cricket coaching in like year 8 or whatever. Seriously, year 7, year 8. Before that, I used to go to summer camp and stuff, and like seventh standard, 8th standard, 9th standard was batsman focused on bowling a little bit, and then on just bowling caught on just because of how tall I became. That's the story.
I see. I actually, yeah, that's the first that I'm hearing of that. Is
Yeah,
I
that's
never
the story.
realized you started off as a batter.
Yeah.
So I guess talk us through that stage where you were really considering cricket as a professional career option, and what that was like. What goes into the training required, at least to make it at a semi-pro level. Can you walk us through that phase of your life where you were considering to make it your professional career?
Yeah, for sure. Like from my under 16 days till my under 23 days. So that's say from 10th standard till year 4 of engineering. I was really, really looking to play cricket. That
So
was
that's
my
6 years, right? Give or take.
6, 7 years. 6, 7 years of my life. I think it's about 16 to 22, 23. That
Wow.
that's the time frame. Nothing else mattered in my life. Like obviously I did a lot of other things. Wrote my 10th boards, wrote my 12th boards, got into my engineering college and like studied
Yeah.
engineering and everything. But in my head, all that mattered was I had to play for India. That was the only sort of North Star in my head at that point.
Mhm.
Whatever else was happening was just on autopilot, like, yeah, it's happened type of thing. But I guess it takes a lot out of you, and it requires you to do that one thing and one thing only. And I think that's a realization that's happened to me a lot later than it should have. Well, I guess I don't know if it's for the good or for the bad, but like it requires. I realized over those 6 years that how important strength and conditioning is, how important sleep is, how important being at the right place at the right time is. And the thing is, I'm not talking about luck here. I'm talking about presenting myself in places that I need to be more often
Okay.
than what I presented myself. Like maybe going and showing up at specific places to bowl, or if there is a particular tournament, instead of I don't know doing something else, actually showing up there and doing that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think just to break it down, I guess um, it it takes a lot, and I think a lot of people who were my peers were really successful right now. Um, if I look at what I did and what they did and what they did different, I guess what they did different was the fact that for them as well, nothing else mattered. But then the priority stack was that cricket, 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 and then something else. For me, it was cricket and then something else and then something else.
I see.
So there are different components of cricket, if that makes sense. There's cricket,
Mhm.
actual skill, cricket, strength and conditioning, cricket, nutrition, cricket, uh, and a bunch of other stuff, right? Like there's so many other factors, and like I think that's they ticked most boxes out of that, and then that's why they're as successful as they are. And I was barely ticking one box, I guess, if you look back. And I think that's what it takes. That's what it took, and that's what it still takes, probably more right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, to put it into perspective, until the last year of my engineering, I just played cricket and wanted to go pro. Played at a decent level. I wouldn't say I didn't. I played at first division level in Bangalore, which is really good. Bowled to some of the best teams that used to come to play in Bangalore. So, and traveled around to play cricket with the university. Like, went to Sri Lanka about 6 times.
I do
to
remember that. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So it, I have zero regrets. Just the fact that just a retrospective sort of thought process, saying that
Mhm.
if I'd done that, maybe my path in life would have been different.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and I know that that's something that we will be exploring through our conversation, where essentially it's your entire journey so far sounds like it really has just been a exercise of just connecting the dots backwards. That's referencing the Steve Jobs speech, that convocation speech, where he where he was like, you can only connect the dots backwards. On that same theme, would you say that perhaps if you hadn't enrolled in electronics engineering, which is what you studied, you might have had a better shot, or not really?
you know, there was a point right after engineering, right, where I worked really hard. There was this 1 year
Hmm.
where I worked really hard on my skill, and right after, when COVID hit, I think we may hit on it later on when we talk about what I did after engineering and stuff. But I'm just referencing this because there was a point in time there where I kept thinking about this, where had I done this, would it have been better? Had I done that, would it have been better? But then my conclusion at the end of it was like, there are like obviously going to be 100 different paths that I could have taken, but I took this one, and I'm just dealing the cards that I've been dealt with, type of thing. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and move forward based on where I stand today. But I guess, yes, that's true. I guess a lot of people, engineering is requires 4 or 5 boxes of its own. Like, if cricket has 4 or 5 boxes, engineering has 4 or 5 boxes of its own, right? Barely taking a box each. Maybe I didn't do any favors to myself,
Mm.
but I'm not in a very bad place today, according to me either. So that's how I think about it. I guess doing the right thing that I felt at that point in time. Again, the most fun thing and the right thing at that point in time I've done. Obviously, my parents wanted me to study a little more. Like, they
Mm.
wanted safety. It's obvious, like they care for me, right? Like, they
Right.
want me to do well in life, and they want me to just be well settled and that sort of thing. And for them, it was like they lent more towards the study and focus on that. Make no mistake, they supported me in whatever I wanted to do. But like, yeah, their obvious preference was towards something that gets me a
Hmm.
good career and a good life, a fair guarantee of a good career and a good life.
Right,
That
and
makes
that is for sure, without a
Yeah,
doubt, important.
yeah, I agree,
That's
I
it's
agree.
that safety net to for you to stand on your feet, which it really sounds like you have. So, a couple call outs. I really liked what you said about you've always wanted to do the most fun thing that you can at any given point of your life, because I know, and our listeners will know through our conversation exactly what you mean by that. But so talk us through that year after graduating from your undergrad, where you were, just full time preparing, practicing, getting better at cricket. And then it sounds like COVID came around and kind of foiled your plans in some way. What was that
Yeah.
like?
So 2019, was playing Div 1 cricket in Bangalore for a very, very, very good club. Um, it was packed. The club side was packed. Like, there were 15 really good cricketers, and I wasn't
Wow.
getting as much opportunity that I wanted. So I spoke to the captain, asking him about my chances right after my engineering. This is June-ish. So I told him, like, look, is there a chance for me to make it this year? And he said, unfortunately, no. And I think he did me a favor there, because I said, okay, cool. If that's the case, I'm not going to show up for the rest of the games. That's what I told him. Very, like, he's still a very close friend of mine. We chat and everything, but that's what I told him. Look, I don't think I can show up to the rest of the games if I cannot get to play, because I need to make a life for a living. Because, well, my engineering is done. I need to do something with my life. So I'm going to do something else. And that something else at that point I had only two things that I did really well. I used to work out a lot, because obviously I wanted to be a fast bowler with you know
Right.
who could bowl fast for a bit, and obviously I wanted to get strong to do
Yeah.
that. And I played cricket. So these were the only two things that I did in really well. So I thought of going to one of the best strength and conditioning facilities in Bangalore at the time, and then saying, "Look, um, I've been training here for a while, and I have these. I have this time right now where I want to train for the off season and get ready for the next year. would you accept me as an intern because I wouldn't have anything else to do for the rest of the day? And they were like, cool, because they needed somebody to do some work, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of work in a gym, right? Like,
Right.
there's generating leads, there's also taking classes, and there's
Hmm.
programming, and different things require different sort of skills. But like, there are a bunch of people that they always need, and there's always hands on deck needed. And
Hmm.
obviously they chose me as one of the persons to keep hands on deck. And at that point, I was interning during the day at the gym, working out again during the day, playing cricket for the rest. So basically, I joined a really, really, really good academy in Bangalore. Um, paid per session. Told him what my goals are. I said,
Hmm.
look, my goal right now is to make it to the under 23 Karnataka side next year, and then I want to move forward. Here are the problems that I have with bowling. Here are the problems that are not getting me noticed. Like,
Hmm.
this is why I'm not getting noticed. I want to fix these things.
Hmm.
And he said, cool. And he really, really helped me. Genuinely, I think that's the best I've ever bowled uh, over those 9 months. That's the fittest I've ever been. That's the most I've ever lifted that period. Like, I look back and I'm like, wow, I was. I look at my pictures, Google Photos just shows up these memories
Yeah.
from then.
Hmm.
I'm like, man, I was because there's nothing else I was doing. I was bowling and working out, bowling and working out. That's it, right? And interning at that gym, and obviously that I took really seriously as well. Wrote an exam called the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist exam, and the eventual goal was like, okay, I'll play cricket and I'll also start a gym. That was my sort of fair plan in my head. Okay, cool. That's my goal. Like, that's my vague goal, but like, that's my goal. But then in in March, COVID hit, right? Like, and there was so much uncertainty, right? Like, what next, and like, where do we move, type of thing. And yeah, well, that's where I guess that block of training sort of abruptly ended, so to speak.
So, and after that point, did you decide to get certified as a trainer, or did you completely stop cricket, or were you still kind of on the fringes, kind of hushing it out, seeing what might happen, keeping your options open, or I guess how did you approach that uncertainty that you referenced just now?
So I got certified in December, but hit in March. So I was
Okay.
already working with a few more clients and training them during the day as a coach, as a fitness coach,
Mhm.
and again playing for the rest of the day. Well, yeah, how I approached that time was like, yeah, I continued doing these online sessions for cricketers and whatnot at that point. But like, yeah, there was not really much else I could do from a cricket playing perspective.
Yeah.
But interesting stories at that point is when Kunal and I started talking. Kunal is a really close friend of mine. I know I'm just randomly bringing up a random name into this, but we played together
Mm.
for a few years, and then we got together and started building stuff for cricketers slowly during COVID. So basically, what happened was that we started talking and saying, look, there's so many of these cricketers who have faced problems that we have faced, and there's nothing else we can do right now because, well, I can't play. he
Yeah.
he
Nobody can play
yeah,
apparently.
he had thought of starting coaching because he had
Mm.
just stepped back from playing active cricket, and he was like looking at what to do next and that type of thing. And we're like, okay, cool, let's try and build something for cricketers. So that's where I think, subconsciously or subtly, I think I sort of realized that maybe making it big in India would is not as predictable, obviously, because there's uncertainty right now. Also, there's a lot of hurdles that I'll have to clear after this uncertainty passes, and I don't even know how long this uncertainty is going to be for. That those 2 points sort of came in my head, and like, okay, cool, let's try and build something for cricketers. And I obviously still had this goal of trying to start a gym eventually, right? Um, but then Kunal did something very interesting. He said, whatever we do should not hold us into a location. And in hindsight, that's an excellent sort of point that he made, right? Like, otherwise, I would probably be owning a couple of gyms in Bangalore today. Genuinely, if Kunal hadn't told me that day, I was like, my point to him was, after COVID, let's create this thing where cricketers come and train every day. Like, let's create this place where cricketers come and work out every day. He's
Mhm.
like, why do you want to do that? Like, everything's online. Let's do something, digital. That's
Yeah.
what his thought process was, and that's all it was. But like, I think that insight helped so much that we started talking to cricketers and thinking about what to build. And I guess that's where Cricket Revolution's seed started. So Cricket Revolution was what I was working on in that period.
So that sounds like it was your first foray into, actually building something out. So you referenced that you were yourself a cricketer, so you had a great insight, or, you could empathize with what cricketers needed at the time and, the way that they needed it delivered to them. So I guess I'm curious about what a typical program look like. So say I'm a person, signing up or reaching out for help or coaching, and I'll be like, hey, I'm a bowler, say I'm, whatever, hitting 130 kilometers per hour and want to get to like 140, 145. So I get on a call with you, and then what happens?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, this has a backstory as well. So, when I told you that I was juggling cricket and engineering, there were four boxes that I was talking about, right? That cricket
Yeah.
had. I think I'm going to reference that here because, like, those four boxes is what we cater to essentially. I'm saying four because now I have the benefit of hindsight, but like, it was strength and conditioning, skill, nutrition, and mindset. So basically, what any cricketer could do was, again, this was what we drafted and based on the resources that we had, started sketching and stuff. There were two ways in which what we were building could be used. One was directly by teams, where teams already had coaches, and then they could use a portal where they would interface with their players.
Mm-hmm.
And two was directly by the players, where the players could, start using the tool where, well, if they wanted anything from skill related stuff, where they could upload their videos and get feedback from a TCR coach. If they had, any mindset related stuff, they could track their mood from time to time to see what causes
Oh,
fluctuation. They could journal, and they could meditate. Um, and they could track what their food was. Like, they could track calories of what they're eating every day. In hindsight, again, we were trying to do Calm plus plus MyFitnessPal plus, there's a bunch of other tools, like four or five
yeah,
tools together in
yeah.
one particular product. And like, for complete noobs who've never built anything in their lives and who couldn't code at the time, thinking about, like, think, and at that point it was like, the more the merrier, right? Like, the more the better, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you
it's
want to
almost,
cast as wide of a net as
yeah,
possible.
exactly.
Like you don't want to
um,
leave anything on the table.
it's a classic no mistake, by the way. Like, it's a classic no mistake. I would make that mistake again if I did not know stuff that I know today. Looking back, obviously cricket revolution still exists and people still interface with the product, and it the way they use it is different, but it still exists. Looking back, I think initially, if we had done one thing really well, we could have probably been more successful than what we are today. That's how I think about it.
That's a very interesting insight, Utpal. And I guess around this time, and I only really know this for our listeners because me and Utpal have followed each other on social media for a while. But you were really good, and like you were sharing a lot of content around cricket, like really niche content around like a slight little angle of change on your wrist can make you swing the ball and such. And like you were really, putting yourself out there and really being the brand of Cricket Revolution. What was that like? And recently we've had a guest on this podcast that spoke explicitly about building a personal brand online, but their approach was more via LinkedIn. So I'm just trying to explore how different that is if you do that via Instagram, which is what you were doing. So what was that whole experience like, and what were you trying to get out of that essentially?
Yeah, cool. Again, this again has a backstory. So each question has a backstory, and it moves me
No,
further
I
on.
love it. It's just it
Um,
makes it so much more concrete. So
yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Um, so, so again, fast forward. We spoke until March. Fast forward to September. I now
Mhm.
had an admit at Loughborough. I realized, I started applying to uni slowly, saying, I need to do something in life. Yeah, I'm building this, but like, can I do anything that's cricket related, sport related, that may help me in life? So, signed up for something called a master's in sport biomechanics at Loughborough, which is supposed to be the best sport university in the world, has the best sport incubation center
Wow.
for startups trying to build sport and sports tech products. I was like, cool, I got in, and I was like, cool, let me go, because there's nothing that I could do in India at that point. I think from March 2020 to like September 21, there was not much in India happening. Like, there was stuff happening, but it was all indoors, and like, obviously first wave, second wave, there was a lot of stuff that couldn't be done in India. So I was like, okay, let me just go to the UK. And at that point in Loughborough, we started reading a lot of fast bowling papers as a part of our
Oh,
modules.
interesting.
What are the four kinematic factors that help improve ball release speed? and it's super interesting to me given how much of a cricket nerd I am, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
this is just me nerding out on the stuff that I love the most, and programmatically, right? Like how do force plates work, like a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have thought about cricket in that sense at all, had I not done that course. Those videos that I created on Instagram at that point were just me. It was just me reading those papers and trying to create as concise a format of it and then put it out. Mostly for my own consumption, because I was making it as concise as possible and trying to understand it a little better. But also it was on brand for Cricket Revolution's
Okay.
audience that was trying
But
to.
that was not your primary goal. It sounds like you were really just
Not
doing
at
it
all.
to disseminate that knowledge that you
Not
were
at all.
gaining and that you were really passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
I didn't have
amazing.
a purpose as to why I was doing it. It just seemed cool. There were a lot of views that it was getting. It was like dopamine inducing also. Like,
Absolutely.
like one of them actually crossed like a million, like something like that, where it was.
Wow.
I think I spoke about the corridor of uncertainty, where the batsman is neither playing forward or back
Uh-huh.
when a fast bowler is bowling, and that one just blew up. It probably is because of the visual that I had taken from Channel
You
9 or
did
something.
put a decent amount of work into those. I do remember
Yeah,
you had like the green screen action going on and you had all of your
yeah,
colorful visuals and
yeah.
slow-mos. It was really well produced, it sounded like, or it looked like, I mean to say.
Well, produced as in like it. Instagram had a green screen feature. I used to
Right.
create these videos and then just do it. I didn't use any editing tool except Instagram itself. And the goal, though, was just it felt good that I was getting that attention from the right kind of people. Like attention from cricketers in that sense felt really good at that point because we were building something for cricketers. I was doing something in cricket, trying to get attention of cricketers. Yeah, it just felt good. And I think for that period, I generally tell a lot of people I was studying cricket. I was building stuff on top of cricket. I was playing cricket because I started playing cricket in the UK at that point. So I was literally my entire life revolved around cricket, and I think looking back, that is genuinely the best time of my life that I've ever had. Like, yeah. So again, without getting philosophical, yeah, that's what I was. The goal was not to get build a personal brand. To be honest, the goal was to get as many people interested in Cricket Revolution as possible, and also because I was enjoying the attention.
Yeah, yeah,
Honestly,
just for the thrill of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Sounds like that's amazing, and I want to call out just how happy and how glowed up your face became just now when you were like, that was the happiest period of my life, and it's so nice to hear you say that, and as you recount that experience, because yeah, it really does sound like
yeah.
you were really thriving back in the day. Not that you aren't anymore, but so let's talk about Loughborough. My first question is, how long did it take you before you realized that it's pronounced Loughborough?
Yeah, when even now, if somebody reads Loughborough back in India, they say Loughborough or
Yeah,
whatever.
I would have said Loughborough or something.
Yeah, well, I I think I went in Feb or March of just before COVID hit in India. I was going to these uni fairs in
Mm.
Bangalore, and I went to the Hyatt, I think on MG Road, and I met
Yeah.
somebody from Loughborough, and they said Loughborough. That's when I started saying Loughborough. I was like, I really want to get into Loughborough, whatever. I said some variant of how an
Yeah.
Indian would pronounce it, and then they said no, this is how it's pronounced. They didn't actually say it, but they spoke about Loughborough, and I
Hmm.
just caught on. I guess that's how that's how I started saying Loughborough and not
Um,
Loughborough.
and then I guess on a more serious note, though, you referenced that it's one of the best, if not, I think you said the
Yeah,
best,
yeah, the
sports
best.
biomechanics institute in the world. So was it competitive? It must have been. Like, what was the process like? I'm so curious. I actually know nothing about this field. So did you have to submit like proof of research, or like what
Mm.
was that whole thing like for you?
It's a very interesting thing, right? Like they looked at people who are at the intersection of engineering and sport, especially for
Ah,
sport biomechanics. They needed, and I fit right in, interestingly, uh, people who had some sort of an engineering background, because there was a bit fair amount of programming involved in trying to process the data that you'd be collecting during the research projects that
interesting.
you'd be doing. Also, people with sport and sport related backgrounds, either certification
Hmm.
or something that you have done in sport that could aid the course or aid your interest
Professionally or semi-professionally, right?
professionally, not just as an athlete, even like say you had a certification. So by
Okay.
that point I had a
Yeah.
certification which was
Hmm.
for strength and conditioning, but I also had played, so that actually aided my application.
Right.
But I guess just having played will not help, to be honest.
Okay.
Because it's a course where you're doing research and not playing as much, unless it's a sports quota seat, I guess.
Right.
But it was mostly the certification in strength and conditioning, plus the fact that I was an engineer, and plus what I think I also proposed what my research project would have been, and like in hindsight, it was very naive. I didn't know how the course would be structured and stuff, but like I guess they thought it was ambitious and interesting, and like they said, thought of giving me a chance type of thing. Yeah, it is pretty competitive because I see a lot of people in India right now applying to different courses in Loughborough and keep getting denied because their backgrounds don't match. Either they're too technical and not very sporty, or they're too sporty and not very technical. So there's this middle ground that I fit into at that point, I guess. And yeah, that's what got me in.
Interesting. So, what was your experience like suddenly finding yourself in a new country, studying or researching in a way that I think you hadn't been exposed to before at that time? And then the third facet of that is playing cricket in a new
Yeah,
country, because even though the sport is the same, I'm sure from the little I know about cricket, it must have been a completely different experience. Not just because of the pitches and such, but really the weather, the type of teammates. So, can you break those three down for us a little bit?
for sure. All the cricket that I played until I started playing cricket in the UK was very serious cricket, right? Like if I don't do well on a day, I used to come back home and cry or feel very upset, and not cry, but like feel a little upset
Right.
and take it
Kick
personally.
yourself. Yeah.
I still take it personally though. Like I still, really feel upset and like take it personally, but like it's a lot less riding on my shoulders in terms of cricket right now. But yeah, in after the first few months, I think 4 or 5 months, met with a really nice club called Cropston, signed as that overseas, started playing cricket there. Really, really enjoyed my game there because, well, 2, 3 things that are different in England versus India. The conditions, obviously, a lot more overcast. Wickets are a lot greener. All games are played on proper turf wickets. Most grounds have a slope. One's downhill and one is uphill. The ball is a lot darker. It's called the Duke's ball. We play with SG balls in India in professional cricket. Duke's balls are used in Australia. Kookaburra balls are used, but like I had never played with Duke's balls. So all of this was an extremely, extremely interesting experience. Now I've played 3 or 4 seasons. I'm in my 4th season.
And is this club cricket? Sorry, what like league or how does this work? Is it organized? Like what?
Yeah, it is organized.
Okay.
It is organized by the ECB. I play something called the Premier League. It's called so the counties handle it. There are about 6 or 7 Premier Leagues across the UK, which are feeders to county clubs. Well, you
I
do well
see.
in Premier League, you get picked for second class and first class cricket.
Gotcha.
So I play in Leicestershire. I still continue to play in Leicestershire, although I've moved to London after my masters. But like, so that's how it's structured.
And is it every week or every month across the year, or how? What's the like
It's a summer
season
sport.
duration?
It's a summer sport because it's cricket. So it's every Saturday from mid-April to mid-September.
Gotcha.
That's when Premier League cricket is played. 22 games, especially in Leicester. It differs. Some places have 14 teams. Some places have 11 teams. Some Premier Leagues have 12 teams. The league that I play has 22 games, 11 home and 11 away. And the home and away structure is also different in the UK versus India, by the way. Like,
and you're
India,
traveling with your team, I'm assuming, to all these.
Travel as in like you just show up at the opponent's ground.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I meant. But it's still travel, right? Because you're
Yeah.
maybe in, I don't know, Brighton or something. So that's
Well,
likely a.
inside of Leicestershire, though. It's
Right, because it's the same county, I see.
Yeah, so you're inside the same county, and it's probably like a 30-minute drive away each of those grounds. But,
and then do all the like players, family, and friends make a spectacle out of it? Like, are there usually people watching?
Insane. It's insanely good, and there's a lot of affinity to one's club. Like there are a lot of people who are retired who are really passionate about the club. They're passionate about the club and the game. So, well, they wear their heart on their sleeve in the sense that like if there are close games that are lost, people who don't play are really upset. Like, how could we lose to this particular team, right? How haven't we beaten this team? Why are we, if you're in a losing streak, for example, right? Like somebody will show up and each ground has a bar, a very nice bar area with, drinks on tap and like it's really nice. And culturally, that's a difference as well. In India, cricket is almost like it's a lot more mechanical in a good sense, though. Well, it's
like less room for errors, I think, is what you're trying to say in India, perhaps.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, culturally, it helped me personally because, well, I had sort of thought, okay, maybe that's the end of my cricketing career. It's not that I'm playing professionally, but I'm playing a very high level of cricket, which gives me stuff to do. So I think that was the highlight of my masters, I guess.
Amazing. And in terms of the academics itself, what are, looking back, maybe one or two main core ideas that you took out of those couple years that, were the most impactful in terms of the things you learned, whether or not it can be applied to cricket or just, about sports biomechanics in general, but really trying to, boil that ocean of what you studied in 2 years into, one or two drops. And I know that's a very loaded question, but I would appreciate any insight there.
Yeah, 100%. I think personally, for me, it was getting comfortable with writing code. It's a key transferable skill that I think I appreciate a lot. Although, like, there was a lot of programming involved in my undergrad, I was very bad at it, right? Like, I could write code on sheets of paper and get away with, passing my exams type of thing. And that's how a lot of people did as well in
That's
my group.
true.
But what I realized here in during my masters was that actually writing good code helps, like, and also, like, getting comfortable with with programming in general. I think that's where it happened to me. For a lot of people, it's in year 10, 11, 12 in school. For me, it was a little bit delayed. Secondly, I think it also taught me how, sort of, it does not need to be. So again, coming back, right, like, the skills that I gained in my masters sort of helped me in getting Cricket Revolution in a better shape. But, like, there was nothing business or startup related that was taught in the course, and there
Yeah.
was nothing biomechanics related in my product that I was building. But it sort of helped each other, but mostly the course helping the product rather than the other way around. So what I'm trying to say is, another transferable sort of, insight from there is that it
Hmm.
need not be related on face value, but it could still help. Two things need
Absolutely.
not be related on face value, but it could still help. So I think, yeah, these are the two things that I guess are my biggest takeaways, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it almost sounds like you learned how to apply yourself to stuff
100%.
that's maybe or may not be directly related to
Yeah.
cricket itself. So with that, I guess once you finished or you graduated, what was the road ahead from there? Because I'm sure there was still a decent amount of uncertainty because, again, you're in a new country, not entirely sure whether you want to stay there or go back to India. I know there was probably like a STOA MBA degree somewhere in there, and then you ended up staying, I guess. So I'm curious to hear about your journey after graduating from your masters.
Yeah. Well, my master's finished in September of 21, I think. Yeah, 3 years now. And finished, and then, well, I was looking for things to do, and on one day while scrolling Twitter, I realized that this thing, which is an MBA bootcamp, that a lot of people are recommending. A lot of people who I looked up to were recommending. So I was like,
Mm.
what is this? Let me just talk to one of the founders. So I set up a call and spoke to them with a bunch of others on that call, and I realized that, look, this is something that I'd be interested in. And it was mostly stuff around how businesses are built, how do you get your first users, what factors are needed in defining your ideal customer persona, that sort of stuff, right? Like, which I
Mm.
hadn't learned in any thing that I'd done before.
Yeah,
I'd done my master's in
formally at least you
formally, yeah,
hadn't. Yeah.
exactly. And I thought it was interesting, so ended up doing it. It was about 6 months of rigorous. I think on the weekend we had like 8 to 10 hours each on Saturday and Sunday,
Hmm.
and during the week we had case studies that we had to do. And
Hmm.
um, I may be jumbling the format a little bit, but by
Yeah,
and large,
for the
that's how.
most part. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was very, very rigorous in the sense that I learned a lot of stuff that makes businesses successful, which I hadn't learned before. It could be in terms of how sales works, how negotiation works, how do venture scale businesses, what is
Mm.
venture scale, and how do venture scale businesses exist? How do they raise money? How to get your first few customers? All of these questions, I was super interested in the answers of, but I didn't know how to get
Get
the answer.
them. Right.
And one good thing about that bootcamp was that they invited people from a lot of real world scenarios. Each weekend there was somebody from Cred coming, or somebody from a VC coming and speaking about how their stuff works. One weekend there was an actual person who was a CFO or finance person coming through and explaining how accounting in early stages work and how accounting in large scale companies work.
Wow, that's just
Basically,
sounds incredible. Yeah.
yeah, it was really good. It was really good, and I'd recommend it. I don't know how the course is now, but if it is still the same, I would recommend
And
it.
what is it called again? How would one look this up if they were interested?
It's called STOA School. I think they
Okay,
changed to
Stoa
STOA.
School. Okay.
Yeah, and it's founded by a few of my friends now, Raj Kunkolinkar, Aditya Kulkarni, and a bunch of others. But if you Google STOA School, I think you should be
Yeah,
able to
and
get
I'll be also sure to drop that link in the show notes
it.
for this episode. And then so basically, but when you were doing all of this, you have an ulterior goal in mind? Like you wanted to make yourself more hireable, more employable in the UK maybe or in India? Or was it really actually just, to upskill yourself and not, necessarily from an employment point of view?
Well, at that point, it was to just learn what it would take to build a successful business. I was tinkering with Creative Revolution even then. We had started building the app along with an agency. At that point, it was very, very sort of biased towards how do we get more users to Cricket Revolution? How do we make it more, interesting for users to use? How do we grow adoption? That sort of thing. So those were the sort of that is what I wanted to extract from the course and apply directly there. But there were a lot of lessons as well, right? Like why something may not work, right? Why is something in Cricket Revolution not working? How how product management done in general? Like because well, again, my insight is on surface level. I'm flagging this straight up, right? I'm not a product manager. I've never been an actual product manager in a large organization. But how product management works, I can probably tell because of the fact that I've built products myself alongside people I've collaborated with, and I've also learned a bit about it in store. So there are a bunch of other insights like this that I gained, eventually ending up in us acquiring the first few users of Cricket Revolution at that point. But then the actual Cricket Revolution idea sort of also evolved in that period, where we realized that building a product iteratively requires those iteration cycles, and that does not happen with an agency, right? Like you define
Mm.
scope, and then they sort of deliver on the scope.
Deliver and then that's it.
That's
Yep.
it, right? And like we needed that iterative process, and we didn't have that capability internally. But what we did have was, let's say, the ability to coach cricketers. So we are like, okay, cool. Let's continue coaching cricketers. Let's continue coaching cricketers, and let's scale the business that way. But that meant that I had to look for other things to do as well, because
Mm.
well, I had decided to continue to stay in the UK. So I started looking for things to do, and not a particular agenda, right? Like I was like, okay, eventually I want to start something up. That was my obviously always in my head. From a while, ever since Cricket Revolution was started, like I really liked having built something of my own, or with a bunch of people that I like working with. So I was like, cool. Let me look at what exists in the UK market. But the interesting part was that I was looking at roles which were business and business adjacent. Let's say, again, product management, which was very hot back then, or a founder's associate or chief of staff, or whichever role that helps me learn as much as possible from a business, which is in the early stages, that I can apply to whatever I want to start eventually again. Well, at that point, I stumbled on different roles. But the interesting bit was that the competition that I was competing against were like people who are graduating from Warwick, Cambridge, LBS, Imperial. These are like literal pedigree, names, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean it's as good as it gets.
yeah,
You
in
know.
the UK at least.
Yeah.
Maybe the US has like obviously better names, but like
Right.
in the UK or in the on this side of the Atlantic in general, I guess they are as good as it gets. So, well, I lined up a couple of interviews for founders associates and stuff like that. So I think I was competing against these folks, and I realized that well, I needed to deliver on one USP of
Okay.
mine, and that's what I tried doing, and that was mostly in terms of trying to land as many founders associate roles as possible. That's when I met Igor and Mo, who
So
will be
real quick, just a quick sorry the interruption, but what goes into a founder's associate position? Like, what are the skill sets that somebody needs to excel at that position?
Well, I
just
think a
for.
founder's associate is a role that you would do to sort of shadow the founder initially. And I think it's very case specific, it's very company specific to shadow the founder to sort of take from them whatever they don't need to be doing so that they do the best at what they need to do. Um,
I
it's
see.
it's not You're not an executive assistant in the sense that they need to outsource everything to you.
Hmm.
You are a founder's associate in the sense that you have the capability. You're a chief
Of
of staff founder associate,
doing things right, right.
or also understanding what needs to be done without being told that things need to be done. For example, it could be, let's say, a bunch of outbound that the founder is doing on LinkedIn that you could do yourself, and the founder could probably speak to them. And
Yeah,
then, the founder could be doing something else in that time. I'm just giving one small
yeah,
example. But
totally.
there are specific instances. I think this is what a founder's associate is. Obviously, different companies come up with different descriptions, but it is people who can understand whoever they're an associate to a degree where they can understand what can be delegated and delegate it themselves, and can be given the ownership to have that delegation capability within them, if that makes sense.
That's
That's
very
what a founder
succinct.
associate.
Yep. No, that makes total sense. Sorry, but now you can continue about how you
Yeah.
came up to be co-founder at Digger.
Well, first an employee, I guess. So it was very interesting. In hindsight, yeah, co-founder now, but met Igor and Mo from Digger. They were looking for a founder's associate. Ended up applying to that founder's associate role, and it was very interesting. So the first time I spoke to Igor was like there was a role available. I applied, and then he messaged me on LinkedIn at 11:45. I don't think we've discussed this, by the way. Just remember the story. He
Uh-huh.
messaged me at 11:45 in the night and said, "Hey, are you open to a chat?" I said, "Cool. Thanks for applying. Are you open to chat?" I said, "Cool." 11:45 in the night, mind you. And and I said, "Cool, right now." And he's like, "Yeah, cool." He's like, "This is outrageously inappropriate. We can do Monday if you want, but it would be. I'm sort of looking for people right now." I was like, "Cool, let's speak." And then he told me about the company, what they were trying to do. At that point, Digger was trying to build a Heroku top like UI on top of AWS to simplify deployments. And I was like, "Cool, I'd be happy to contribute in whichever way possible." He was like, "We're looking for somebody to handle BizOps, sales, marketing, and growth because the team entirely consists of engineering folks who are deeply technical, nerdy, geeky, very deep into the problem, but we need somebody to
Mhm.
grow whatever we're building as well." That was the sort of JD,
Sorry,
essentially.
and you had applied just online for this position,
Yeah,
or
so just like 10 or 15 minutes before that, uh,
interesting? Wow.
I had applied, like with LinkedIn Easy Apply, just 10 or 15 minutes before that. And yeah, I received that message. And then on Monday, I met them at WeWork, right? Like immediately, like 2 days in, I met them at WeWork. And it was very interesting where the interview went very, very well. It was not an interview as such, as much as it was a conversation initially. On Monday, by the way, the good part about Digger is we've moved really fast and we've iterated really fast. On Monday, the job description was different. On Friday, it was founders associate. On Monday, it was growth engineer. But again, it primarily was engineering growth for
Mm,
whatever exists as a product.
mm.
And met them extremely interested in what they were doing. Super passionate about the problem. Super passionate about hiring the best team. Well, spoke about a few growth ideas in terms of what Digger could do to get the first few users, get some paying customers, and that they already had 4 or 5 paying customers by then. And well, they gave me an offer, and I took it as a founders associate slash growth engineer type of thing. Fast forward, I guess I'm going to just expedite the story a bit. We the company continued to grow. We had a few pivots over the next couple of years, and I think in February 2023, we pivoted to something which was the open source alternative to Terraform Cloud, because the product surface area was this broad, and then we started shrinking it. And here also, there's an experience, right? There's looking back at Cricket Revolution's app that we were building too many things at the same time. And I
Mm.
think even at Digger initially, we were doing the same thing. We were solving multiple problems where we were taking on secret management, we were taking on CI/CD for Terraform, we were taking on containerization of whichever repo people had to upload. So I guess we were solving like 5 or 6 problems, and we realized there were multiple points of failure. Again, same realization that I had at Cricket Revolution like a year or two later, but now in a venture-backed company with multiple engineers and resources on hand. which was interesting because iteration was much faster. Looking back at at Cricket Revolution, comparing here, iteration was much
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, and for that comparison to, I guess, make, land even better, can you like really dumb it down for us what Digger exactly does? Like pretend
For
I'm
sure.
five. Yeah, what exactly does Digger, what problem does it solve?
So Digger, what it does today after 4 pivots
Hmm.
is it does CI/CD for Terraform. So essentially, CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous
Yep.
deployment, and it does it for Terraform, which is infrastructure support. Um,
Okay.
so essentially, that's what Digger does.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
If you want me to put it in a sentence, yeah, I guess that's the simplest way to put it, I guess. In February of 2023, we pivoted to this particular idea. Yeah, we iteratively got, so in the first few months, got a lot of stars, got a lot of attention on YouTube, got a lot of attention from influencers in this Terraform sphere, and just continue to lean in towards that. And in October, I was offered to be one of the co-founders because of a few
Wow.
internal changes that needed to happen at Digger, and I accepted it. And ever since then, I've been the co-founder of Digger. And
So you went from growth engineer to co-founder.
yeah, yeah.
That's pretty incredible, man. How does that make you
Well,
feel?
not much changes in terms of what I do, though. Like, day to day is pretty similar. I still handle growth. I still handle business development. I still do whatever it takes to get new users to start using Digger, and retain them after they start using Digger, and try to get new paying customers. So this is what I did back then. This is what I do right now as well.
Mhm.
Some added responsibility, obviously, because it's there's
Right.
more
More
ownership.
at stake.
Yeah, more at stake.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it was not much has changed other than the fact that um, I have a lot of gratitude that they had trust in me, to be one of the co-founders, and I obviously took it as soon as they asked for it. Yeah, that's the change that has happened.
And then I know you've been traveling a lot of late. So what's your first time, or I guess maybe I know you've been there a few times now, but what was your first time in Bay Area like? Because I know for somebody that's so into tech, it's really, the mecca of where you want to be.
I think, well, I had zero exposure to the US, let alone Bay
Yeah,
Area
yeah,
before that.
that's true.
um, and going to the Bay Area really opened my mind. And I think that, to be honest, if anybody is building a venture scale company, access to customers and access to capital is the most in the Bay Area. Period. Nobody can debate it, regardless of whatever people say, and that's what my opinion is. And that is the realization that I had. Right, I went there. I went there for a hackathon as well. Like I participated in a hackathon just to see the vibe of how hackers just interact. I have seen a few hacker houses in the UK, in London. I've been to a few AI tinkerers meetup. I've been to a few hackathons. I've
Probably
seen.
watched Silicon Valley.
I have watched Silicon Valley. I think we watched it together back in the day.
We probably did, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But I knew how the Bay Area worked, like in terms of how nerds build stuff that people want and grow it to a
Mhm.
scale of you know ginormous scales. Like, while seeing it in person, I think I just was super inspired, to be honest. And yeah, I'm super bullish on the fact that we have access to it, and that we can go there whenever we want, and get access to customers. Also, a lot of Digger users right now are based there. So, not just the Bay Area, but in large parts of the US.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess TLDR would be that access to customers, access to capital is excellent. Talent is insanely good, and ambition is genuinely infectious in that zone. I don't know. There's something about it, to be honest.
Mhm.
So that's what my realization was after going there.
That's so true. I did want to close out with a couple questions. The first being, I guess, what does the future would look like for you from this point? Like, where do you envision Digger going? Like, I guess, just maybe even more so, like, where does your life go from here at this point?
Well, at this point, I think in my head, I'm constantly solving two problems. Personally, it is to help cricketers as much as possible. Professionally, it is to get Digger.
That's so interesting that you have it separate between personal and professional. It makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah.
It's just not something that
So
I've
personally,
been
that's why I put
exposed
cricket
to.
on on every Saturday, right? And I think for my sanity, I need to continue to play it. I need to continue to help cricketers. And the only way that I'll do it is if I'm charging people for it. Like, that's my motivator at the end of the day, and that's what we continue to do. Like, how to make fast bowlers the strongest possible that they can be, so
Mhm.
that we produce as many fast bowlers as possible. And I am subject number one because I want to test my programs myself. I want to bowl
Right.
myself. I take my speed gun to the nets every time I go to the nets and see what's improving, what's not. Yeah, that's personally. Professionally, I think building Digger to a stage where it's default to life first, and then on to the de facto tool for people to use for Terraform or OpenTofu automation. I
Amazing.
think there are no numbers in my mind or anything. I guess it's
So
mostly
yeah, that I wasn't necessarily looking for a number on that.
yeah.
And I guess to close it out, my last question would be, if there were to be one theme that that you've found that your life trajectory has followed so far, that is not cricket, because obviously cricket is the theme right there. It's like a no-brainer for anybody that listened to this conversation. Outside of cricket, what is the one theme that has been consistent for you throughout, and that has helped you in your journey, and just really the massively incremental jumps that you've made in your journey?
I think I said this already, and like I'm a guy who loves having fun, and I just did whatever was the most fun at each time. And I don't even think I've done the right thing. Like I probably have done the right thing in hindsight because there are multiple right things, I guess. And
Right.
I think I did one of the right things, and it was because I wanted to have fun at that point. And I think continuously it's been, yeah, if not cricket, then it's doing the most fun thing possible at that point, which is incidentally helped become the right thing in hindsight. But hopefully it's right going forward as well. That's what I feel.
I I just love your ability to, answer such a loaded question in, such a simple, nonchalant way, but and still in a way that makes so much sense, because yeah, you're right. You did say that before, and clearly your every step of your journey has revolved around, okay, what's the most fun outcome here? Let's do that.
Yeah.
And clearly it's worked out.
Yeah. The right thing to do is almost the right thing to do for you is almost always the most fun thing to do for you because well it's right
That's
because it's
true.
fun. I think if it isn't, then well, yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I guess those decisions can be a bit more nuanced than that,
yeah,
because,
100%,
like, yeah,
absolutely, it's
yeah,
subjective as well, right? Like I know
right,
people who use frameworks and stuff and still get there, and it's amazing for them, I guess.
right. Well,
But like personally, this is how I think about it, I guess.
amazing. Once again, thanks so much to Utpal today for taking the time and speaking with us, and for all that you do for cricket, as well as all the budding cricketers out there, helping them. I hope you continue to do that, and I hope to see you continue to excel and grow in your professional career as well.
Thanks, Naman. Thank you for having me.
That brings us to the end of episode 8 of the Ready Set Do podcast. I trust that you found Utpal's walkthroughs of his decision making process at various points in his life journey entertaining as well as insightful. If you enjoyed this discussion, the simplest way to support my podcast is by subscribing to my YouTube channel and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify. Below the like button, please feel free to comment any suggestions, feedback, or nominate any guests for the podcast. If you would like to get in touch, please reach out to my Instagram, which is ready.set.do. Finally, the quote for this week is, "Are you doing life or are you living?" by Dale Forehand. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes every Wednesday.